Got my hammer. Good morning, everyone. My name is Representative Terry Roy. I'm the chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee over at the House. I represent Rockingham District 31. With me today, Representative Murray from Manchester, Representative Harriet Gathright from Nashua, and my vice chair, Representative Rhodes from Cheshire. And we are here on 318. Would you folks like to introduce yourselves for the record?
We're having all much paper.
Yeah, I know.
Good morning. I am Senator Sharon Carson, representing Senate District 14, and I chair Senate Judiciary.
Donna Susi, I represent Abington City, Manchester, in the town of Litchfield,
Excellent.
and I've been involved in the district for a number of years.
Oh, I know.
Jeb.
Doing a lot of good work on this bill, and really appreciate where we are, and I'm Jeb Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. President. It has been a long slog for all of us. Last time we met, I made a commitment that we would look at this in depth and we would spend time doing it. And I feel like we've upheld that, and we put a lot of work into this. And looking at the changes the Senate made, you did as well. And we've all taken this very seriously. With that, there's only a few things that we wanted to address to see that if we could come to an agreement on, and I'll start. The first one, I believe it seems to be just a misunderstanding of money. The 1.7 million that was going to be split between the House, between the court and the law enforcement with regard to the bail tracking system, that was removed, but my understanding is that it was possibly going to be funded through ARPA, or some, and maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, that was my hope, and I don't know if it's on the fiscal committee agenda for June. I thought that everybody was okay with that, but I guess I would recommend, since it's pretty important to the bill, that we keep it in for now, okay?
I was going to suggest some type of contingency language.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good.
Exactly.
All right, so if we agree on the amount, we agree on its importance.
Yep.
It's going to be in there before we sign one way or the other.
So I had hoped it would be in May, but just Chairman Roy, so you know the process.
Yeah,
Most of the ARPA money has been allocated, so there is some monies that have been allocated but not spent that are being returned that can be used for worthwhile purposes, and this was a worthwhile purpose, so
Yeah.
I highlighted it, but there wasn't enough room to do it in May.
okay. So we're going to just, like I said, if we put contingency language, if the money from ARPA doesn't appear, we'll fund it through the
Yes.
general fund.
We agree.
Excellent, thank you. Let me see. There was one other issue I wanted to mention before I give it to my colleague. And if you just bear with me one second, it was. Okay, so there was a change in the standard to hold someone. We had clear and convincing evidence as a standard to hold someone for either danger or a flight risk. The Senate moved it to preponderance of the evidence. There's arguments out there that regarding Constitution from the Salerno case. I don't particularly buy into that. Having said that, though, I think that holding someone their liberty, there should be a little bit of a higher standard. So what I was going to propose to the Senate is, how about if we split it and say preponderance of the evidence for someone who is a flight risk, and the clear and convincing standard still if it's holding someone for danger. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
That's fine. Reasonable.
So we both get something there. If someone is dangerous enough, they need to be held. The evidence has got to be just a little bit higher that they are dangerous. All right. With that, I would not introduce, but hand it over to Representative Rhodes. She had a particular issue she wanted to address.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all of our esteemed colleagues, for being here today. The one thing that I very much would like to address is the fact that we clearly agree on far more than we disagree on. And on this particular issue, I'm curious if it even was intentional. It could have been also an oversight. But if you look at page 33 of our side-by-side comparison, we did have in there for if a person had been arrested, if it was a if it was a a specific crime that had like a victim, if you will,
Violence.
and yeah, a violence crime. And we had where if the person was going to be released, that there would be ankle monitoring, like a bracelet, and that the police would notify the victim, give about an hour, if you will, for the victim to be able to, if they feel like they need to get to safety. And I noticed that the notification had been removed, and I wasn't sure if that was meant to be removed. If it was, I would like to discuss the possibility of having that in there. I think it's very, very important for the victim's safety, for the victim's sense of security. And my understanding is that there will be no fiscal responsibility at all. And they also, I do know victim advocates do let somebody know if a person is being released from incarceration, prior to their release, they're notified of that. So I would really like to see if we can discuss that and have that be put back in there.
Representative, do you want to tie that to violent crimes only? Because if you have what would be constituted as a victimless crime, you don't want the police to have to just go notify everybody in a particular neighborhood that this person is out. I think it would be more appropriate if someone has been a victim of a crime that they be notified. But we also don't want to tie the hands of the police. And it really comes down to what is reasonable. What is a reasonable effort? And I think if we can agree on that, the police will make a reasonable effort rather than a time frame, and really leave it up to them to decide whether or not, how they're going to be able to contact the victim. I think a reasonable effort would work for the Senate.
So, thank you, Senator, if I may.
Yeah.
Basically, everything you said is what I was thinking. I wasn't looking at if a person, if it was involved in like a shoplifting or anything like that. I was looking at more of a personal crime against a person. If it's like a domestic violence, of course, is something we hear about a lot. If it's any kind of an assault, it doesn't even have to be a sexual assault, but even of course an attack.
Right.
I think that it would be in the victim's best interest to be able to at least have a heads up that person is being released on bail. We had originally put in there an hour, and we thought, well, if the officer or someone in the police department makes a phone call, they're not able to get a hold of the person, possibly drive out there, leave a note at the door. That's all very, very easily documented, in my opinion. And when we talked about this, I do know that everybody that testified, nobody raised any kind of concern that they didn't think that it was going to be possible, or if it was going to be too cumbersome to the department.
I think that I think the reasonable effort though is acceptable. To your point, it's very difficult to micromanage police work from this building. And when you say you have an hour, what does that mean? Do you have to spend the whole hour doing it? I mean, I think if we put in there a reasonable effort shall be made by the law enforcement to notify victims prior to an assailant being released, I think the House would like that. Do my colleagues all agree with that? Representative Garrett? Yes. Oh, good. So I think we have an agreement on that.
Okay, yep.
Excellent.
Thank you, Senator. Means a lot.
Representative Murray.
I just wanted to check that are we in agreement in terms of like the language that was here for it being a crime of violence against an individual person, including any act of stalking or criminal threatening?
Yeah, that
That's
pretty
all
much
we all
covers
agree
what
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
had suggested.
of course.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you make that reasonable effort to notify, that person then can go to the court immediately, and have an ex parte hearing and a restraining order if they feel they need to have that. So
Right.
I'm okay with that. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Chairman, would we keep the July of 2024, the start date on that, the effective date on that?
I can't see a reason not to, that unless the Senate has an alternative. I
No.
mean, that's
No,
just
I
a matter
think
of
that's
them
fine.
starting
I'm
to
just looking
notify.
at our list of dates, so
Yep.
that was what I put down there. Okay,
The
thank
only
you.
time that the
Yeah.
dates come into issue is when we start talking about money, and I think that
Yeah, that's the
we'll keep a
difference.
close eye on that.
Okay.
Representative Harry Gathright, do you have an issue that you wanted to address? You might want to pull that closer. They're not picking up very.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate this time to actually discuss this 318. My concern was the magistrates, and it's sort of been like a real baby for me in terms of, I think we asked for 15 originally, and at some point we were down to 10, another point we were at 5, and now we're at 3. So for the work that they have to do, I would say that it's almost impossible for them to get that work done with just 3 magistrates. Obviously, they would probably be working quite a bit. So my request is that at least we try to go back to at least 5, and maybe next year put something in there for the traditional 5. But even if we don't do that piece, I do believe that based on the work that they would be doing, that the judicial system would probably be asking for magistrates anyway within their budget. So.
And before you respond, I didn't do it. I want to give Representative Gathright credit. The whole concept of magistrates has been hers, and she brought it up. I think this is the 4th year we've dealt with that. So I think the concept itself is really a great concept, and hopefully the court will be able to take advantage of it to utilize these quasi judicial officers in a way to free up the judges so that we can get these backlogs moved along. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, I can respond. This is a new program, and one of the things that we had talked about doing is tying the magistrates at this point to the violent crime aspect. So the only time they would be involved is when someone is being accused of a violent crime. The bail commissioners can take care of all the smaller issues. And I think that's a good division of work. We looked at the cost of having more than 3, which was expensive, and we're not in a budget year. And yesterday I had a conversation with the Chief Justice, and he was fine with the 3 to begin, as long as they're tied to violent crimes only. But I think it's important to realize that if they need more, they can always go to fiscal and they can ask for more. And next year is a budget year, and we will have had the opportunity to see the magistrates and how they're working, and if we need to make corrections, we're in a budget year. So if the court feels they need more, they can make the request. But we just felt very comfortable because of the cost of the magistrates, and we're not in a budget year. We arrived at 3, as long as they're tied to violent crimes only.
Is it the position of the Senate that's the best you can do? Is the 3?
Yeah, that is the best we can do at this point.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that for a minute. Representative Murray, I'm sorry, did you have any other issues you wanted to bring? Representative Murray, did you have an issue that you wanted to bring out?
I mean, the biggest thing on my mind was the money for the bail tracking system, but did we agree
Yeah.
at the
Yeah, we
beginning
did.
that that's,
We-
yeah?
I think you had something regarding homeless people, or you wanted the
Oh, the language that was removed in terms of setting cash bail for indigent people, like people who can't afford it, that was removed. And I think that's really important to us, that we can not roll back the parts of the bail reform originally that were to protect people from being held simply because they can't afford bail. And so we were wondering if that's language that we could insert back into the bill.
Yeah, I think that where our goal is, I think, and we all agree, cash bail really isn't for people who are dangerous. If they're dangerous, they need to stay in jail. Cash bail is to ensure someone who might not otherwise show back up to court, and it should hurt them, but it shouldn't be used to trap them. So I feel like if maybe we use the language of the court, that the court already has, the standard of indigency, that might be something we could use to say, if they meet that standard, then they can't have cash bail higher than they can afford.
Right, and that was the original purpose of bail reform, is that we did not want to be holding individuals just because they were poor.
Yeah.
And so we can work around some language to get that in place. We have no problem with doing that. It's just making sure we get the right language.
Okay.
I-
So-
If I could jump in.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure,
Chair,
absolutely.
I'm in agreement with that, as long as, the parameters of what we're trying to do with the crimes that are articulated in this doesn't automatically give somebody a pass just because they're indigent.
Oh, no, I don't think it should touch at all on the fact, we have that list of crimes that this would only be for people who are eligible for cash bail. That list would not be eligible just based on the nature of that crime. So I think we're covered on that, and I would agree with you 100%. This is where they say, okay, we would like to make sure this fellow terms, or this woman comes back for her court date, and we're going to set cash bail. We all know that if you set cash bail at $500 on a homeless person, you might as well have just said he's not getting bail. So we just want to avoid that situation. So if we use the court standard for indigency, like we agreed to, I think we'll be fine. And I think that was it for the House. So if you would mind, could we take a 10-minute recess and discuss the one thing that we still have to come to agreement on the number of magistrates?
Okay, that's
And
fine.
then reconvene in 10 minutes. Sure.
Again, in the side by side with the farms versus clearing.
Um,
Mr. Chairman, to answer Mr. President's, it starts on the side-by-side on page 16 in paragraph 2.
and we'll be.
There's also
10 minutes. Okay, we're back on the record. We've had a chance to talk. We would still like to see if you could do 5 if the money's there.
Okay, Deb, well, we talked about that.
So
Deb,
I think a rational way to proceed is to allow a request to be made of the fiscal committee for up to 5. We're authorizing 3. This is something that fiscal routinely does.
Yeah.
And I think that would, if there's a need for 5, that would clearly be able to come before fiscal,
Yeah.
before next June when there's a new budget.
Okay, so we're guaranteed the 3, and if fiscal approves the next 2,
Yes.
we'll get the 5. And then from then on, it's up to the court and the budget. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Great. I think that was our final thing. We would just want to make sure the language is correct on
Yep.
the indigency. The language we put in the original bill. What was it again, Ally?
The court shall have the authority under paragraph 1 to set a cash bail amount only if it is an amount which the defendant is able to meet.
You remember what page that was on?
10.
10. Thank you.
Now, I'm not married to the exact language, but I am married to the exact meaning.
The
So,
spirit of it.
yeah, it's got to make sure that it does not,
Okay.
that bail is not being set to hold people
Okay,
that can't possibly meet that bail.
okay.
Yeah, if we want to make like a note that it applies with the indigency like definition according to the courts or something
Yeah,
like
that would
you
be
know.
fine, I think. So I propose, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, if you could take a look at this, the effective date, one of the effective dates for January 2025, I'm just wondering if that was an oversight, if it should be, I'm going to have you just look at it because it's the list of everything we just talked about. And I'm not really sure why we would have it not start until the beginning of next year, not with everything else.
Who set those dates? Did we or did
A little bit of, I don't know.
Probably both.
I think both, but I think honestly, I think some of it was an oversight. I don't think that it was meant to not, I don't think that they were meant to not, communicate with each other. I just think it might be the way that ended up happening. So if we're going to do the amendment, I would think that now would be the time. I think I had asked our researcher, I think you guys should also have a copy of that, of the effective start dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, if you look at the second page on the bottom, I'm just curious if those should start July when everything else
Next
is
year.
starting.
Oh, yeah. The judicial training requirements, is that what you're speaking about?
Yeah, so I gave my copy to the chairman, but, so, okay,
Yeah,
so it
and
has
then you've got a
effective
list of whole
January 1st, 2025. But we had, as an example, the hour notification or the notification of a person being released or person being released. I think that's taking effect July
Right.
2024. So would we not want these other like bail provisions? Would we not want that also to take effect the end of July, or do we want that to not take effect until a year from now?
I would think as long as there's no money or staffing issues, it can take effect in July of this year. If it's got a money, staffing, or
I
training
see the
issue,
court, it's like,
Can we?
well, absolutely, please approach if you have something to add.
Hello, sorry for the folks watching at home. Erin Cregan, Judicial Branch, General Counsel. There's just a period of time to change our forms, to train our judges, we're not able to do it. That would be a few weeks to get that all done. So we typically do all of that for January 1 every year. So it's often the case that when bills affecting the court take effect, they're January, so we can do all the form redesign, all the hiring, all the judicial training all at the same time.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so what if we do this? The notification piece, that's something that could save lives. That could take effect this July. That just means the police start notifying people if someone's getting bailed. Anything that has to do with the court or training, January 2025. Does that make sense?
That would make me feel much better, Mr.
Okay, can you
Chairman.
make a note of that so that
Yes.
because what I'm going to propose is, it seems like we have an agreement.
Yes.
Why don't we recess till tomorrow at 1 o'clock until we have an actual document, the final document? Because we know what happens sometimes. And then we will make our official agreement and sign off, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Does everyone have time at 1 o'clock tomorrow?
no, I don't, but
Alrighty.
I will be here. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, okay, all right. And everyone here can make it? All right, so
Well done.
I'm going to recess to one tomorrow, and we have an agreement in principle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll
If I
save the
may,
handshakes and
before
pictures
we
for
go,
tomorrow.
I just want to echo Senator Bradley's comments and congratulate the House Criminal Justice Committee for all the hard work that you did on this. It was a heavy lift, and you folks put a lot of work into it, and you produced a good piece of legislation. So I just want to congratulate you all.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the Senate's patience, because it took us 5 years, but we're here.
Yep, we're here.
We got it
We got
right.
it
That's
right,
all that matters.
so-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, we're ready to go if you are. This is the Committee of Conference for House Bill 1292. My name is Representative Terry Roy from Deerfield, Rockingham 31, the Chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee. I have with me my Vice Chairman, Jennifer Rhodes from Cheshire. We have Representative Dennis Mannion. Where are you from, Dennis? Salem, Rockingham 5. And we have Representative Muse from Portsmouth. And we are here to discuss the differences between 1292. With that, the change is the one made by the Senate, and I'd rather just have you guys tell us what your thoughts are.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And we added Senate Bill 563, which is our sanctuary city bill, which you folks tabled, I think, 177 to 188. And we're hoping for a second shot at seeing passage of sanctuary cities. I'm happy to talk about why I think they're important, but I suspect that everybody has already heard me 1,000 times on that, and they know the arguments backwards and forwards. It's up to you. I'm happy to go into it further, but I'll leave that to your discretion.
Well, yeah, if you could, just a little background, a short background of what now, why now? I think we all agree that there's an issue, but why now would be helpful, I think.
So, I think we need look no further than the difference between our state and our neighbor to the south, which has sanctuary policies in place. Massachusetts is spending almost $1 billion annually to house and take care of migrants. And our view in the Senate is that when you have an incentive to come to a state vis-a-vis sanctuary policies, you will have more people coming to the state because it becomes an incentive, a magnet. And I think we are concerned about that. We're concerned about, the ongoing drug crisis, human trafficking, the potential of, people coming in on the terror watch list. I mean, these are all issues somewhat beyond our control, obviously. But, myself and Senator Carson were on the northern border several weeks ago. We met with federal and local officials and state officials there that, described that situation. So to me, we have to do the things that we can do. So what have we done? We authorized $1.4 million in the budget last year to assist local law enforcement. We were told when we were on the northern border, that's helping. For anybody who hasn't been up there, it's very remote, and quite frankly, it's very accessible from Canada. You walk across a stream that's about as wide as this table and maybe that deep. And it's all woods, and there's a beautiful dirt road, and so people can easily cross the border if that's their intention. But because it is so remote in the town of Pittsburgh, it's at the end of a 7-mile dirt road. By the time, if a local residents, and there are some people on that road, big tracts of land, farms, dairy farms, if they see somebody crossing, by the time folks would be able to come and do anything about it, law enforcement, it could be 45 minutes away. So while that's sort of a subset of the issue we're dealing with, I think the sanctuary city bill is something that we can do to say we're not going to create that kind of incentive. And again, I think we need to look no further than what's happened in Massachusetts. The $1 billion, people having to requisition community centers, Logan Airport, I mean, things like that for housing of folks that have crossed illegally. So that's why we're back at it again. It is a very important bill to the Senate.
Are you aware that the version that almost passed the House had been amended? I had, when it came to criminal justice, I had amended it. because there was language in there that suggested, I believe it was the police shall take all possible efforts. That was felt to be pretty broad, and they were very concerned. So I took that out, and we got close with the amended language.
So what I would say is that, just speaking for myself and not for any of the other Senate conferees, that would be a rational compromise. And if that's what this committee or conference came to, and you had a chance to sell it to your good folks in the House, I would do everything I could to sell it to our senators.
All right, well, let's hear from the other conferees. Representative Rhodes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I yield. I don't have anything to say just yet.
Okay. Representative Mannion? Nothing? Representative Muse, I assume you have something to say.
When this bill, when this bill came before our committee, I had a number of concerns, and one of the biggest concerns is we got a letter from the heads of law enforcement from several of our communities, including our largest community in the state, Manchester, basically urging us to kill this bill. And we have also heard from immigrant rights group, from the ACLU, from other folks in the House who are concerned with liberty issues and around the due process problems that come with detainers and things like that. And the bottom line is that the state should not be in the business of enforcing a civil immigration detainer when that's the only thing that that an immigrant can be charged with. One of the issues that I had with Representative Roy's amendment is it would actually open the door to anyone being charged who's subject to an investigation. So it wouldn't even take arrest or jailing or something like that. So one of the things we just did that was a really good thing together is we passed a racial profiling bill. If you're not extremely careful about how you implement this, what you've done is you've made that situation worse.
Would you think about this? If we took the amended language and we made it strictly, if a person's arrested for a violation of New Hampshire law, not questioned or stopped or anything like that, only if they've already been arrested, and then and only then it becomes to their attention that it may be an immigration issue, that then they should cooperate with the immigration enforcement. Would that make a difference to you?
So my understanding is what that would do is just formalize the current policy that's actually in place in many departments now.
Yeah.
So when somebody's actually arrested for a crime in New Hampshire, when they're jailed for a crime in New Hampshire, if a detainer is out on them, law enforcement will know about it and they will contact ICE. So there's nothing in the, one of the reasons why they differentiate between sanctuary policies and sanctuary cities per se is none of the cities that have actually passed the sanctuary policies in New Hampshire are doing anything that would get in the way of that, because if they got in the way of that, that would be a violation of federal law.
I believe, and I trust me, I don't want to be argumentative, but one of the members of our committee, I forgot, where is she from? Keene. The policy in Keene, and you can look it up on their website, is not to contact or cooperate with ICE, if I'm not mistaken. So be that as it may, so it is happening, and if all we're doing is formalizing it, I'm not sure that would be a problem. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think part of it is how you formalize it. So, for example, one of the things I think people struggle with is the ambiguity of the language without something in New Hampshire statute. So, one of the reasons why we enacted the racial profiling bill is because we wanted to make that clear to people as a policy statement. There are no penalties, but we wanted to make it clear to people as a policy statement that behavior was essentially was unacceptable. So I think one of the things that could be productive would be actually spelling out the guidelines of how officers are supposed to handle these situations. On the other hand, and I think one of the things that I had given you at one point was an idea for an amendment that that actually would have allowed communities to issue policies against sanctuary. So
Yeah,
So
that's fine, but
there-
it also would have still left the door open for communities to have sanctuary. So it
well,
kind of,
and I mean,
is-
the part of it, that's part of my objection here too, is this is, you know, essentially what we have in New Hampshire, or we have 3 communities where we have elected officials who have made a decision to, you know, to support this. And it's actually, there's nothing in federal law that actually requires local police to actually assist in the enforcement of a detainer, right? That's just something that we do. You know, that different departments have different policies on now. And I think that's one of the issues is you have Manchester PD has a policy, you have the state police have a policy. And one of the things we learned about those policies too is a lot of those policies were actually put in effect to improve relations with immigrant communities, which is really important in cities with larger immigrant populations like Manchester and Nashua. And so part of the police objection to this was it would actually undo a lot of the good that that's been done by these policies.
the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in support of the iteration that you've just given. I'm from Manchester, lived in Manchester for the last 60 years. I live on the west side of Manchester. There has been a maximum effort by the city, by law enforcement, to bring the community together and to integrate all of these refugees who have come to our city. And we've been a placement center for refugees from all over the world. We've got the Nepalese, we've got the Bosnians, we've got the Pakistanis. We have a large group of immigrants. And the relationship has been cultivated over a period of time. And our law enforcement people are dead set against this piece of legislation. Our chief of police sent a letter to most members of the legislature. So I spoke against this bill on the floor of the Senate. I have great respect for my colleagues and their opinion, but my opinion is this will not work. It does not work. It should not be put in place. It doesn't have any bearing at this point in time on the money we're spending. I was a member of the Finance Committee. We allocated the money for the northern border. That was to train people to work the northern border. All right, we did that. We've made that commitment. I think what people are doing in other states is their responsibility. They're being run by the politically elected officials in those states. If they deem it a responsibility to take care of people, then they do it. They're not asking us for help. So my position should be very, very clear. I will support the people in the city of Manchester. Immigrants from the city of Manchester came up and testified on this piece of legislation. If you read the testimony on the bill, I think you could gather all of that. I think it's very important that we maintain relationships with the people who have come to our community, that have decided to take up residence in our community, to build lives in our community, to build businesses in our community. These people should not be singled out and gone after. I think it's bad public policy. Thank you, Mr.
I would
Chairman.
agree that that would be horrible policy. Thankfully, that's not what this bill does. Senator Bradley.
Thank you very much. So New Hampshire and many other states have a plethora of examples of people in this country illegally that have committed heinous crimes. A mass murderer was apprehended in New Hampshire who had been living here illegally. If there wasn't an ICE order to detain somebody like that, or they were subject to sanctuary policies, that person wouldn't have been apprehended. There were just 2 police officers shot on the street of New York City yesterday or the day before by illegals. So it's example after example after example. The poor girl in Georgia who was killed. I mean, I don't think I need to go any further. It's happening in our country. And the only reason it's not happening worse in New Hampshire is that there are only a handful of welcoming ordinances in towns like Lebanon and Hanover and Keene. And that's what we're trying to stop. We're trying to stop the problems that we see in other states that are out of control from coming here. And with all due respect to the chiefs, the 6 chiefs who sign it, and nobody's more in support of the chiefs on a lot of big issues than I am, and they know it. They're flat out wrong, not only misguided, but flat out wrong. What we're talking about, my colleague from Manchester, is legal immigrants that are here, and the outreach that goes to legal immigrants, not people that the first thing that they do when they come to the United States of America is break our laws by crossing a border illegally. And if you create a magnet, you get a magnet. And God help us, you know, $1 billion in Massachusetts is something that is out of control, and our budget, given, you know, education funding that we're going to have to deal with next year, in all likelihood, the YDC settlements, you know, what we just authorized and it's on its way to the governor on Group 2 fix. If we have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars because we've created a magnet, because we can't pass this bill, because we don't have the political wherewithal to pass a common sense bill to say we're not going to be an incentive, shame on us.
I think that it's important that we make the distinction because oftentimes it's not made. Nobody in this body or your body is interested in harassing or in any way singling out legal immigrants to this country, and them constantly being tied together by someone saying, well, immigrants' rights groups. We're not talking about immigrants. We're talking about criminals who have illegally come to the country. And really, I'm not even interested in New Hampshire police policing them. As far as I'm concerned, that's a federal problem. But when our law enforcement arrests them for a violation of New Hampshire law and they become aware of a federal issue, I do not think as a policy we should be picking and choosing when we cooperate with the federal government. It's not good. I think that our friends on the other side would object if we were to say, you shall not cooperate with the federal government on some other things they happen to like. I think a blanket policy of the state should be we cooperate with the federal government. It doesn't matter who the president is, whether we like him or not, because it changes every 4 years. And I'd also like to point out that New Hampshire is a state. It's not a republic. The cities and towns do not get to do what they want. They didn't vote to join New Hampshire. They were within the borders when New Hampshire was formed. So they follow the laws of New Hampshire. They don't get to just pick and choose either. So I agree that a policy that says, as a state, we will cooperate with our federal partners. And that goes for everything. I mean, some may say, well, that's hypocritical. Well, not of me, because I just supported cooperating with the federal government on gun control. So as far as I'm concerned, across the board, we should be cooperating with federal law enforcement wherever possible. Having said that, it appears to me that we're not going to come to an agreement at this table at this moment. I, speaking as the chair, and I know 2 of my members will support going to the amended version that the House voted on already. And if we need to, what we'll do is we'll take a recess. We can meet again tomorrow, same time as the other committee, maybe half an hour later, and come up with that version and approve it.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion.
Yes.
Just draft that, your version.
Yeah.
And we'll see where we're at tomorrow and go from there.
Okay, so we're going to recess until 1:30 tomorrow. Same place, same station. Everyone agree? Thank you all for your time and your input.
All right.
Please, I apologize for my casual attire, but I couldn't stand the sweat anymore.
Yeah, it is warm, but that's okay. We'll
Do I remember a fishing game aspect of this one?
Floor. It was a gift when I made chairman. With that, I am calling to order the Committee of Conference on House Bill 1197. My name for the record is Representative Terry Roy. I represent Deerfield and Rockingham District 31. We are here to address some changes. From the standpoint of the two bills, there's three things attached to this bill. The criminal justice part with regard to the fingerprinting for the educators and stuff, we're fine with that. That's good. That's not even an issue for today as far as I'm concerned. The piece with regard to Fish and Game, the same. The last piece that we need to discuss, I'm going to hand over to Representative Hunt and let him take it, and we'll get into that. Representative Hunt?
So, this was the I was working on making sure I say this, uterine insemination. So, originally the Commerce Subcommittee was all set to interim study this bill. And then there was, at the last moment on our day of executing, there was a little, uncomfort with what we were doing. And the way the bill was written, it was basically written to say that any woman could have this procedure done. Okay, even though the underlying intention was to address an expression we learned the previous year, which is social infertility, which the Commerce Committee did not go anywhere with that. So in my attempt to maintain that the Commerce Committee was going to have any floor fights, and we were going to do everything in harmony, I said, let's move from interim study and let's have an amendment. I'll draw up an amendment that would address the issue. And the amendment, I drew up the amendment, and I actually believe the Senate also drew up the amendment, because then when I looked on the webpage you had two, you have 20 and a 21. So you chose instead to go with the one that I specifically would not go for. I made it clear to everyone that I do not consider this procedure a medical necessity. If we're saying this is offered to all women, this is a benefit that all women have, that for whatever reason that this is the way they choose to get pregnant, then but it's not a medical necessity. It is just simply that the insurance company will cover it. And it really, in the end of the day, it's not going to be a big burden to the insurance company because it still has all the same cost sharing pieces to it, and no matter and when it comes to getting fully fertilized or all the other things involved, there are a lot more expensive elements to it, and this is actually one of the smallest expense of all. And so therefore at that point I said, okay, that's fine, but we're not specifically targeting this to one group of people. We're saying that all women should have this possibility. So if you just remove the medical necessity language, then I'll be okay with it.
So just, if I may, for those of us who don't know anything about this because it's not our bill, the agreement, both sides agree that this procedure should be provided for and paid for by insurance. The disagreement is on a description. Is that really, that's all it is at this point? Is that fair?
That's how it sounds to me. I don't know if that's picking me up. So, Chairman Hunt, I think, as you'll remember, on that session day, there was lots of things flying around. So, what you're saying is, if I'm looking at HB 1197 as amended by the Senate, I believe our language appears on lines 25 through 35.
Well, yeah, 20. I see
11,
26.
sorry.
Yeah, new section.
Yep.
So I'm looking at page 36 on the side by side here.
Okay. And so which language specifically would you like to?
But I believe, is, shall provide certificate holders of insurance for up to 6 rounds of intravenous insemination per year, period. So when you see the word 6, the next line says insemination year. So that in accordance with that,
Yeah.
that all that language is what I would want deleted.
In accordance with medical necessity for standards or guidelines developed by the American Society for Reproductive and Asexual Medicine. So I'm curious. I'm sorry. I'm curious to know. I don't. The way I just read that, it's not saying it's medically necessary, but it's medically necessary for them to get pregnant, but it's not medically necessary for people to have. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So is that what your language intended? It seems to me we're just talking past each other, maybe.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Representative. I think that this language was added with the intent of trying to make sure everyone felt comfortable with how this mandate was going to come into effect. But removing the language you're talking about, Chairman, after per plan year,
Right.
to me, doesn't affect the coverage that anyone would get. And if it's sort of muddying waters that were previously clear, personally, I'm fine with removing it.
Okay. Yeah, and then the last sentence, subject to a deductible co-insurance, would be kept. So it's just a medical necessity, and all those other people who I have no idea who they are. Well, I guess they're important people.
So from line 28 on page 11, where it starts into technology, comma, is removed.
Right. So it starts with, yeah.
If the senator is
Per,
good with that,
in accordance, right. So it starts with per year, and subject to a deductible copay. Right.
if Senator Perkins Polka is good with it, so am I.
Do other conferees have anything they want to add?
That's good to me.
It's good to you. I don't know what I'm talking about, so I say yeah.
Um,
As soon as we have an agreement.
and again, I'm fine with that. Do you foresee any issue with that on the House floor? Or do you think that will be an acceptable
I
position?
think that's acceptable.
We hope so.
And I will encourage everyone who doesn't know anything about it to vote yes to.
We like you.
That would be just vote yes to. Caucus. Brad, will you be able to handle that drafting? Yeah, no, I mean that language capture. Thank you. All right, excellent. Thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah, I love these. With that, we are closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now.